Welcome to the Brave Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Connie Jacob, and today I have one of my favorite people. His name is Dietrich, and he has his own hashtag, Go See Dietrich, and I'll tell you, you're going to find out why. Dietrich is a very fascinating individual. We're going to have an incredible conversation about attunement today. He is an emotional intelligence leadership coach and gets people unstuck. Welcome, Dietrich.
Wow, thanks, Connie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. Before I pressed record, you were talking about what you do, and I love what you said. I said, you have to say that for the audience. What did you say that you do?
Well, when people ask me, so what is it that you do? My response is, "Hmm, what I do is I radically transform people's personal lives and their businesses. That's what I do."
No biggie, just transforming lives. And I will say, from being somebody on the other end of the table with you, I will say every time I leave being with you, I feel my life has been transformed. And so that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast so that everybody could
Aw.
experience this Dietrich effect. It is quite fascinating. Get your seatbelt on because we're going to go for a ride. Dietrich, what I talk a lot to parents, teachers, leaders about is this concept of attunement. So we want to connect, but attuning to others. And in order
Hmm.
to attune to others, we need to attune inward. And so I thought that's what we could discuss with you because you are what I would consider an expert in that. And so, just right off the top, what would you say about this idea of having to attune inward?
So the next question people will tend to ask, well, what is emotional intelligence?
Mhm.
And that's a good question. And it's only three words. Yeah, three words. It's distilled to three distinct words. It's about collaboration, motivation, and understanding. So whether it's in a family dynamic, a family business dynamic, business, corporate, or small business, doesn't matter. It's how the brain best connects with people. And so if we're not attuned to ourself, we cannot collaborate with others that well. So if I'm not attuned to me, if I'm not collaborating with me, and I'm not understanding some of the um, awkward places in me that can show up, then building a connection to another person will be very challenging. So, emotionally intelligent people are self aware. That's that self attunement piece. And they can self reflect, self aware, self reflect. So, if I am nervous, I'll say I feel nervous and I'll just acknowledge it in me. And what that does for the brain, it helps the brain relax because I'm not fighting against myself. If I say, don't be nervous, what you resist will always persist, and it creates a misattunement in me. So if I dismiss me, I will dismiss you. And if I'm talking to someone and they dismiss themselves, they will dismiss me. And with some of my clients, I tell them, did you just dismiss me? They go, no, I didn't dismiss you. Well, I think you just dismissed yourself. And see, that's a foreign thought, right? So when we dismiss ourselves, we will unwittingly, innocently dismiss others. Then the attunement is not possible.
Wow.
So,
That actually reminds me of a coffee we had a few years ago. And I don't know if maybe I was just in a different place in my life, but I love how you just call things for what they are. So you had said, Connie, I feel really disconnected from you right now. It seems that you're not attuning to yourself. And you're so kind. I didn't feel exposed in that moment. I felt like you were with me. You were noticing my inner world with me, which was really powerful. And that actually really, in a great way, allowed me to really think like, how am I showing up here?
mm, that conversation, I do recall it very clearly. I dared to take a risk, to come alongside you.
Yeah, it felt like you coming alongside, and I can only imagine, like, as you're talking about, if you're disconnected with yourself, you can't connect. If you're not collaborating with yourself, you can't collaborate. I go back to that moment and how that made me think, and it wasn't a shameful thing. I think sometimes we're afraid to look inside because we think, oh, I'm going to find nothing good. There's everything's wrong with me.
Mm,
But done in the presence of someone who's safe and who knows how to hold their own attunement, I actually felt like you called me forth. That was powerful.
wow, thanks for that distinction. I didn't call you out, I called you forth. Wow, you're good. I like
You
that. I'm
did
going to write
that.
that down. Can I write that down?
You can write that down.
This is the Connie effect here.
And I honestly haven't been the
Oh,
same since. And I think about what you did for me in that moment. Like you said, it felt like a risk, but I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful that you would attune to yourself in order to be able to do that for me. And what a difference that made.
mhm. Yeah, thank you.
So you mentioned collaboration. There was two more. There was motivation
And
and
understanding.
understanding. Hmm.
Yeah, those, they go together. Now, I'll just maybe touch base around motivation and the brain. So the brain has two dominant distinctions around motivation. You can write these down if you like. There's only two. The brain around motivation is either motivated by fear, that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
or desire. So, in emotionally intelligent brains and the soft skills around emotional intelligence, it's desire based motivation, not fear based. These are soft skills. They're nuanced, similar to how I gently yet very clearly came alongside you. It was very soft. It wasn't cognitive. It was just very natural for me. I didn't plan it. That's just how I show up. I'm not trying to show up. It's who I've become. It's who I am in this model of mentoring, training, developing people. It's my lifestyle now. So fear-based motivation. Oh, I have a little card here. Can you see that?
Ooh, explainometer.
So when people explain too much, now a little bit of explaining is like hot sauce on your hot dog. You just need a bit, not a lot, because otherwise you won't taste the hot dog. So people tend to over explain. And what that does, it creates a fear based dynamic in the back of the brain. Isn't that fascinating? And what happens is it creates a fear bond within us. And we're such an explaining, analytic driven culture. We use the research to explain it. And what happens, it creates a glut of information in the back of the brain. And we're busy trying to hold everything together and we can't hold it. And so fear becomes the center of everything when we over explain. So what do we do instead? We describe. Oh,
Oh,
because describing creates image and curiosity. And in the brain, curiosity and fear do not coexist. It's impossible.
wow.
So this is one of my favorite little toys. Can you see what this is, Connie?
Oh, it almost looks like an interesting compass, but
Yeah,
what is
it's a
that?
gyroscope.
Oh,
Yeah, so they use these in ships, sailing ships, and it would turn around and everything. It is like a compass for sure. In planes now they have technical gyroscopes, and but this is a physical gyroscope. So when you have fear in the middle of the brain, or in the back of the brain, your gyroscope is a gyroscope of fear. Everything you see is compassed around fear. That's fear-based thinking. And
Wow.
we get so used to it, we don't even notice it.
Mm.
So emotionally intelligent people are aware of when they're in fear mode. When I know I start explaining things and over explaining, I slow down because I become more interested in convincing you through my explaining that I hope you get it, and I'm afraid you won't get it. That does that resonate?
Oh, as a mom, it resonates.
And as a teacher,
And as a
and
teacher.
and as leaders, when you stand up and you talk at people and you explain at people, the prefrontal cortex in the brain shuts, it dims right down. This is the executive control center. And we do our best to hear what they're saying, but our brain is actually dimming down as we're talked at, not interacted with. So some of the challenges children have, adults have, it's not in their listening, it's the communication is talking at people, not connecting with people. Connecting with is attunement.
Mm.
Talking to someone is like some people like, I mean, I used to really be an over talker. I shudder a little. I remember a lot of those times because I ended up being the audience of one. I was the only one standing because I was so interesting to me. And I didn't realize people were tuning out and being polite as they could to hear me. And it took, once I studied this more, I realized that I was basically shutting their brains down, not their heart and desire to connect,
Mm.
but you want your brain to work in a way that allows connection. So explaining creates disconnect, describing creates connection. Meeting with you at the Chinook Center Mall
That's where it was.
was, yeah, was like going for a walk with a friend and this butterfly lands on her hand. And we just paused in this moment and let that tender, reflective, walking together moment just open something up very gently. That's describing. And I didn't just make this up. This is what came to me because the brain thinks in metaphors. And if you really want to attune, use metaphors. The brain uses 10 metaphors, 10 every minute. We don't even notice like one in 15 minutes
Wow.
because we're not present to us. And if you try and think of it, it will get nervous. It just has to open up naturally. It's an interaction because the metaphors are there already. We just don't know it. So if you want to find the quickest way to attune with anyone is to say, I feel like I'm in a pond with you and we're fishing together and it's a beautiful day. I'm really enjoying this time. Thank you for letting me be here. You see how that feel like opened up?
Mm.
A
Yes.
metaphor,
Yes.
and the attuning begins to happen.
And so, and does that move to desire? Is that where we're creating that desire rather than fear?
Correct. Desire is always about innovation, and it activates a part of the brain called the hippocampus, which is where innovation comes from. If you want to motivate someone, become innovative. And so, how do you do that? Well, here's a phrase you can use. So, what do you think, Connie? What do you think about what we've been chatting about?
So now they're not being told how they should think. They're allowed to think.
There we go.
Hmm.
And the hippocampus is smiling. And it's like, oh, good, I get to say something. And that's motivating.
Yes. Yes. Hmm.
So I understand you're in a very innovative project in your life. You've taken some things on and you've had to become super innovative, correct?
That is correct.
Therefore, the motivation is very high.
That is true.
It's because you are stepping into adventure, trying things, and you're being very resourceful and innovative. you're collaborating, you're being innovative, your desires will be very high. And people will want to like help me understand what you're up to. And that's all innovation, and it creates desire-based motivation.
Wow, this is gold for any leader, any teacher, any parent, because this motivation is probably something that I hear the most from all
Mhm.
three of those groups is how do I motivate my child? How do I get these kids to learn? How do I move my staff to care about our cause? This is really powerful. So we
Yeah,
have collaboration, we have motivation, and what was the third one you mentioned? Understanding?
understanding. Yeah.
Mm,
The opposite of misunderstanding, we all know very well, it's misunderstanding.
mm,
And when we're misunderstood, we hate being misunderstood. Then we over explain, and that makes it worse.
right.
And it creates fear, and then poor decisions are made from misunderstanding because the attuning isn't taking place. So I'll give you a couple of quick tips here around misunderstanding. So let's say we have um, a conversational rupture and there's a misunderstanding. And so, Connie, did I miss something like about a few minutes ago when we were chatting? I sensed we kind of slowed down in the flow. Did I miss anything there? See, that's a phrase you can use, and they'll go, well, no, or maybe, or use this. Is there anything else that comes to mind? Like, okay, I see I missed this area. Is there anything else? See, now collaboration is opening.
Mm.
And my motivation is to build that attuning connection again. So those are a couple phrases. And I'm conscious of the time here, but I want to give you one more little tidbit. I have lots of tidbits.
You do have lots of tidbits.
So
Did I just say timbits?
so
Tidbits.
I heard tidbits, but I know you said tidbits. Now, if you're in a conflict with someone and it's not clearing up, there is a powerful question, and I've used it only a few times. Is there something I've done that I need to ask forgiveness for? Can you feel that energy and awareness? Like that's a powerful reflection. See, these are reflections that open up awareness. That's what emotional intelligence is about. So, in the area of forgiveness, this is it's there's less and less and less people talking about or even understanding or knowing anything about forgiveness. However, there's still lots of offense going around all over the place. So this question helps open up the possibility of forgiving. And there's a university, it's I can't remember it right now, but they did a study called the forgiveness study because the students were not bonding, there was strife, and the forgiveness just wasn't in the language. So they studied it, and they found that people who forgive quickly and naturally are the happiest people, and it has to be from the heart. And so every now and then in when I'm working with people, I just check in. Is there any part of your life where you're resentful or unforgiving that's kind of getting in the way of us moving forward? And we'll reflect on it because that's our agreement in when I'm working with people to open up all aspects of who they are so they can grow from the inside out. And it's helping them attune to themselves. It's never about judging. These are tools, and these are soft, skilled tools. And when you use them, this is what gets created
Joy bonds,
instead of,
fear bonds. Hmm.
yeah. So, joy, I'm having a hard time slowing this down. I hope you're not. Are you okay?
I'm doing great here. I'm leaning right in.
Okay. So, joy is two things. And this is very simple and very powerful. I'm glad to be with you. In the brain, that's what joy feels. It feels that feeling of glad to be with you. When we met the other day, I was so glad to be with you. You were glad to be with me, and we have a joy bond.
Hmm.
If we're not glad to be with ourselves, then it's really hard to be glad to be with someone else. And those things can be navigated. The other thing about joy is tenderness towards weakness. And so when you're teaching children, children can end up teaching you, of course. So when we're tender to the vulnerabilities and weaknesses of another person, it creates a joy bond. When we're tender and vulnerable towards our own weaknesses and inabilities, that also creates an attuning joy bond within us. And the third thing about joy is passed on in the brain intergenerationally. Fascinating. So from pregnancy to birth, mommy, daddy, family, intergenerational. That's how the brain builds attunement, is through joy bonds. And these are very soft, skilled awarenesses. And so when I'm training people, working with executive teams, management teams, when I'm working with teachers, there's very few people groups I haven't worked with. I've worked with Hell's Angels, criminals, and I've been exposed to a lot because it's so much of this is the absence of attunement.
Mm.
And soft skills in emotional intelligence creates the most complete form of skill set to generate ongoing attunement so that the brain stays in an attuned state.
Wow. I think everyone's starting to clue in why you have your own hashtag. Go see Dietrich.
So, can I ask a last question?
You sure can.
What's one thing you liked about our chat today?
I feel so it's actually hard for me I feel like I need to go back and listen to this and write it all out. I feel, first of all, very enriched. To use a
Ah,
metaphor, I feel like I'm having a beautiful cup of hot chocolate with whipped cream, but that's actually
mm,
nourishing my soul. That's how I feel.
wow. Thank you. I
Mhm.
can smell that. I can feel the warmth and the whipping cream. You put something in my mind, Connie.
And actually, it's interesting how naturally I want to go back and write everything you said so that I can, understand it. But you bring me back to this idea of just be in the moment. What are you bringing in instead of how much can you learn? That's what I'm really taking away. And joy. I love what
Mm,
you've said about joy because I've always thought joy is such a powerful emotion that we don't talk enough about. And I love the joy bonds. Love that. I often
yeah.
will help teachers understand how can we be driven by delight? How can we show that we are delighting in
Yeah.
those students, our kids, the people around us? How do I show that you are a delight to me? Well, Dietrich, this has been incredible. And I want to encourage everyone to follow Dietrich on Instagram, Emotional Wealth Coach. Fantastic, has tips all the time. But also, if you're someone who is needing individual support, Dietrich is someone who I would very confidently send anyone to go see because of, well, you've just experienced the Dietrich effect. And can you only imagine what he could do with you and that journeying alongside? There's also a podcast that you had mentioned, Dietrich, about the voice of women that Tanya Eklund hosts. And one of her guests was Lindsay Blaze. It was around emotional intelligence and building culture. And just curious, what would you say is a highlight of that podcast? I'm going to put it in the show notes, but what do people have to look forward to in listening to that?
Well, I hired Lindsay initially to help me with my social media. And she lives in Tennessee. She lives in a little town called Bon Aqua. Um, and she moved to Bon Aqua as I started to coach her. She said, "You know what? I need to hire you." I said, "Yeah, I think you do." So we switched roles. We shifted her out of the career she was in because she was good at it. She wanted something else. And then she shifted to this other career that I said, before we do that, we're going to build your emotional intelligence skills capacity. And then we're going to do something together and build a culture somewhere. because all leadership must build an emotionally intelligent culture.
Mm,
Because how the brain learns is in collaboration. And when you have an EQ culture, we deliberately strategized in this area in Bon Aqua, Tennessee. And the story is breathtaking. It is shocking what we were able to accomplish in 2 years and is still growing. And it's because, and Lindsay has like completely transformed as a person, as a leader.
mm.
And she is badass boss.
Awesome. Well, I definitely cannot wait to listen to this. I would encourage everyone to go to the show
Check
notes.
out her Instagram too.
Yeah, well, I'll even put her in the show notes too, but just to see what you both are doing. But Dietrich, thank you for the gift of you. You are a gift to everyone
Oh,
around you, and I'm just so grateful that you would take the time to have this conversation with me.
oh, oh, you're so welcome, Connie. It's so great to connect again.
Yeah. And in the
Thank you so much for
meantime,
this.
everyone else, you keep being brave.